What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about some of the best wide receiver versus DB one-on-ones from the Senior Bowl so far. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver or a quarterback and would like to train with us this offseason, we're going to be traveling out to 12 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to Charlotte, North Carolina. That camp is completely sold out. However, we will be coming out to Dallas, Texas next, the DMV, St. Louis, Honolulu, Boston, Cleveland, Austin, Seattle, Newark, Denver, and Los Angeles. So if you guys want some more information on that, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our camps if you're local to one of those cities. Let's get started with this video. So now, first route we're going to be looking at here is from Tank Dell. Tank Dell has been tearing up the Senior Bowl. He's ran a lot of good routes, and this is a route from day 2 of the Senior Bowl. So this is a corner route versus outside leverage, okay? So now, let's play this thing full speed. Dell comes off, attacks the DB's leverage, and takes the inside release on an outside breaking route. Now, ball was a little bit overthrown, so this wasn't a completion, but still a good route, and he was able to get separation with enough space for the quarterback to throw us open. So the mistake that a lot of wide receivers make, and it's always great to see these types of clips because, especially when it's one-on-ones, because you really get to see who knows how to run routes. So anytime that we have a route, whether it's an outside breaking route, inside breaking route, that does not matter in terms of the release that I am going to take, unless it's an MOR, which means a mandatory outside release. Our release, the way we run the route, is based on how the DB is lined up. So pre-snap, we come off the ball. Dell obviously has his split cut down a little bit far because he's next to the hash. So a smart DB will usually play that outside leverage. Why would a wide receiver in one-on-ones cut his split down to go run an inside breaking route? And usually in a real game scenario, when a DB is outside leverage, he has safety help to the inside. So as a wide receiver, especially when you're in a setting like the Senior Bowl, trying to impress scouts, you need to showcase to them that you can run game realistic routes. So what a lot of wide receivers would do, because they have to run a corner route, is they would force the outside release. They'd come up, they'd try to make a move to the DB's inside shoulder, then take the outside release. However, a DB's sole responsibility when he's in outside leverage is to protect the outside. Don't give up the out route, the corner route, the comeback, even the fade. Force everything to the inside because that's where his help is. So as a wide receiver, I have to take what he gives me, which is the inside release. Now, off the line of scrimmage, you see how Dell closes the distance with him. He tries to step on the toes of the DB, and he attacks his leverage, which AKA outside shoulder and outside hip, and gives him this fake to the outside. That is just strictly to hold the leverage, and we need to close the space so I could get skinny on the route. And I'm going to talk about what that means in a second. But some of you might be thinking, well, if he's outside shade, why wouldn't you just take off and go run the inside route? Why do you even need to bother with the release? Just get up into the route, because this DB is going to get hands and squeeze us to the inside, forcing us to his help. So we have to keep him honest, and we have to threaten him where he doesn't want me to go, which is to the outside. So that's exactly what Dell does. He closes the space and gives a move. Now, the reason why he closes the space, like I said, is so he can get skinny on this break. Because anytime you're running a route, you need to understand that it needs to be planned. You need to have a plan for different coverage situations. And Dell is not thinking about all this stuff right now. What he is thinking about is just the reaction that he's repped over and over and over again versus this type of look. So we have outside shade, and he's off, and he's in this like kind of catch technique coverage. Let's close the space so when I do make a move and I get up into my route, I could work to get skinny, aka try to restack. So on every single route against press coverage, whether it's a fade, a dig, with the exception of maybe like a comeback or a curl, because you have to come back to the ball, we should always be trying to restack the DB. So after my release, I want to make sure that I keep a low pad level position. I am driving out so I can go hip to hip with the DB. One of the biggest mistakes that wide receivers will make when they take an inside release on an outside breaking route is they don't stack, but they don't stack is because they try to run away from the DB. They try to run away from contact. They'll close the space, and they try to run away and then work to restack. But that angle that you take that goes wide, all that does is just give the DB a better angle, and then he's going to be right on your hip all the way to the break point. So let's attack him. Let's close the distance, threaten his leverage, and let's go hip to hip with him. Now, my goal is to restack, obviously. So restacking is when we could get this DB trailing my back hip. And when he's trailing my back hip and he doesn't have hands on me, I can pretty much do anything I want with him. So at the top of the break, Dell doesn't do anything fancy. He just does a hard cut to the inside. He sells with his hips, sells with his shoulders, sells with his eyes to the inside, and being sudden with the cut. That is what's going to get that DB to hesitate That's what's going to get him to stumble. And now, because we didn't force the outside release, we have plenty of space for the quarterback to throw me open. That's the number one thing, fellas. All we need, especially with a quarterback the caliber of the guys at the Senior Bowl, I just need to step on this DB. I need to give him space to where the quarterback can throw me open. So a lot of guys will think, just because it's an outside breaking route, oh, let's force the outside release. DB's going to stay square, and he's going to force you to that sideline because he's not going to give up the outside. At least a disciplined DB won't. And even if you get him by a step, that's not enough room for my QB. So let's run a quarterback-friendly route. Let's know how to close distance, attack leverage, so I can create that separation and restack. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job. Great route there from Dell, closing the space, threatening the leverage, and then winning on that corner. Just got to get that ball thrown a little bit lower. Okay, so now we're going to look at another route here from Tank Dell. And this is a great example of how you guys can stop on a dime. So this is a route that we have not broken down yet. He comes off the ball and he's running this kind of like this curl route, maybe at about like 10 back to 8, I would say. So anytime that you guys are running a route like a curl, like a comeback, maybe a 5-yard hitch, in some cases, maybe a dig, what do you have to do at the top of that break? You have to drop your hips. Now, when it comes down to dropping your hips at the break, an old school method that guys used to love to teach would be, oh, you want to get to the top of this break right here, and then you want to beat the drum. So beating the drum is where you kind of like, literally, it looks like you're playing the drum. I call it milking the cow because of how dumb I think it looks. But it's when guys will move their hands absurdly fast and then chop their feet at the break point. Now, to get an explosive break at the top of the route, or the reason why we want an explosive break at the top of the route is because DBs are extremely talented. The DB position evolves every single year, and it's one of the hardest positions on the field. So they are looking for any little thing that gives indication to them that I am making a break. So rather than stopping on a dime, what a lot of receiver coaches teach is that, oh, when you get to this break right here, you want to just chop your feet a whole bunch and beat the drum with your hands and then get out of the break because it'll help you come to balance and make a sharp cut. Yeah, that might be true, but it takes 8 hours for you to get out of that break. You need to use something called a trigger step or something we call snapping down, a violent hip drop, because that will allow you to decelerate quicker. You end up at the same spot. You still drop your hips, but instead of being a slow sink of your hips where the DB can react, it's a violent drop of your hips. And you see it time and time again. Every single wide receiver draft class, every single wide receiver in the league runs routes like this. They will have guys that can violently drop into the break, and that is what gets them separation. A lot of guys, NFL guys, high-level college coaches, they talk about with wide receivers, they look for smoothness in and smoothness out of the break. And that comes down to two things: this violent hip drop and the ability to sell vertical. So Tank Dell does a great job of both of those. So what do I mean by selling vertical? Like on every single route, my goal is to get this DB to flip open his hips and make him think we are running deep, and then not give him time to react when I'm not running deep. That's as simple as it gets, fellas. But when it comes down to selling your routes, being a salesman, 3 things are required. Number 1, when you get up into this route, you got to make sure you're running hard. You do not have to be faster than the DB, but you just have to make him believe that you're going deep. You have to make him believe that you're running as hard as you can downfield. Number 2, you got to make sure that we keep the same stride. So many wide receivers, before they snap down, they will start to shorten their stride and take these like baby steps because they're preparing for the break. They're not comfortable with their hips. Maybe they lack leg strength. Maybe they lack ankle stability, hip flexibility, the ability to be able to drop. And all that does is that's going to let that DB know a break is coming. So make sure we don't slow down, make sure we don't chop my stride, and make sure I don't raise my pad level. The same reason we want a violent hip drop at the break is so the DB doesn't have time to react, right? Because his eyes are watching my hips. So if he sees a slow sink of my hips, he's gonna be able to react. He's just gonna open up his hips and drive on the ball. A move that a DB will train all the dang time. But if I have a violent drop, he doesn't have time to react. Just like on a route, if right before the break point, you raise your chest up, you start to stand tall, that will also raise your hips, and that's an indicator to the DB. So if we keep the same pad level, the same stride, and the same speed, all of those things will get that DB to believe fade, and I can snap this thing down and get in and out of this break. That's a textbook route there from Tank Dell. Some of the best route runners, fellas, are the best salesmen. They know how to sell the routes. They know what's going to get that DB to flip his hips open and commit to that fade ball. Great route there from Tank Dell, showcasing his great route running ability. So now this next route here is going to be Jalen Reed. He's going to be running a post corner, okay? Post corner against press, and he's going to use something we call a split release. So let's play this thing full speed and then we'll break it down. So a split release is pretty much exactly how it sounds. It's one of those quick twitch releases that you would want to use probably against head-up press coverage. So against head-up press, anytime that DB's in head-up press, we don't necessarily know what leverage he's trying to keep, right? Like in that first example we saw from Tank Dell, that DB was outside shade. We know he's trying to prevent the outside. Another example of DB might be inside shade. He's trying to prevent the inside. But when he is head-up press, we don't necessarily know. So we want to use a release to where I could come to a position of balance and be able to react off of him. Now, sometimes, it might be moving too fast. You won't have, it's not going to be so cut and dry where this DB will jump and you're just going to kind of have to take what he gives you in a way. But let's explain it. So a split release is where you're going to be bringing your back foot up and your front foot out. You're literally going to be splitting your feet, and it's got to happen quick. It's not a jump. It is literally you just move your front foot up and you move your front foot out. We're trying to keep my cleats as close as I can to the grass. So when I split my feet like this, the goal is to freeze the DB and then leave him, but also be able to react off of him. So he splits. DB kind of just sits right sits right in the middle. He doesn't really protect the leverage. He doesn't jump inside, doesn't jump outside. So what do? Is we take an inside release because that's probably more ideal on a post corner route. Now, what some guys will do with this split release is a lot of DBs are very good at disguising their leverage. I don't know if any of you guys watched maybe different clips from the Shrine Bowl. It's kind of like a lower scale senior bowl. It doesn't get as much publicity, but there are a lot of examples of DBs who would line up inside shade and then jump to outside shade. They would line up inside shade, but then jump to outside. Guys who would line up head up, and then as soon as the ball was snapped, they'd go to a leverage. So this split release is a great way to work on that. Because if we have to run a post corner and we split my feet, this is a position of balance. Both of your cleats are in the ground. You're in a wider base. You got a knee bend. You're in a position of balance. So if that DB were to jump to the inside and take away your inside release, we don't want to force it. We could maybe take like a jab step. We could maybe just react and push and take the outside release because I got to a position of balance. That's why I love that split release. It's a great way to react, but it's also a great way to freeze and then leave this DB. So he takes the inside release here. We obviously have to make this thing look like a post as much as I can because it's a post corner. So he's working a restack. He's fighting the hands throughout the stem of the break. And when he breaks to this post, 3 things have to happen. Just like that Tank Dell example we were talking about. To sell a post, to sell a fade, you got to make sure that my body language is there. Hips and shoulders are committed. I'm in a good pad level. I'm not raising up before I break back to the corner. Your eyes also play a factor. A DB is not supposed to be looking at your eyes. He's supposed to be watching your hips, but snapping your eyes around will help your hips and your shoulders get committed. Now, when you break to the post, do you think you want to take choppy steps or do you think we should take full strides? Full strides, obviously, right? Because nobody runs a post with choppy steps. So we break to that post, we're taking full strides, and we got to make sure that we are running hard all the way to that third step of that post corner. Because a post corner is where you break at the post, you take 3 steps to the post, and then back to the corner. But for those 3 steps, we got to gain ground. We have to make sure we're running hard, and we are running full stride. It is super important that when you break to that post, fellas, you have an explosive cut that you can push off of, because that will help your stride, your speed, and also your body language commit to sell this route and get that DB to bite. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver taking the inside release off of that split and then being able to create that separation. Okay, next example we're going to be talking about here is Michael Wilson. So Michael Wilson, I'm going to tell you this right now, I think is probably the best route runner in this class just based off of the different things that he did. Tank Dell is right up there with him, but Michael Wilson is an insanely impressive wide receiver for his size, the way he is able to move. I've really never seen anybody run routes like this at his size before. So this is kind of I would say, not so much like just like an easy example. He ran a lot better routes at the Senior Bowl too. It's just the wrong angle for you guys to see. But this is a great example of him having high route running IQ, which is something that all wide receivers need at the next level. So let's watch this full speed. He's got outside leverage coverage. So remember what that means. This DB's trying to take away the outside, and he probably has help to the inside. So he's going to be running a deep post. This is probably the catch of the day as well. So when he's outside leverage, again, what do I have to do off the line? you got to attack his leverage, threaten him where he doesn't want to go. So he's going to be using something called a wide step release, which is where you step with your back foot wide, trying to get this DB to jump to the outside, make it look like a speed release, and then take that inside release. Now, let's play at full speed. So what he does such a great job of is using his size to his advantage and leaning into this DB. Because remember, when he's outside leverage, he probably has safety help to the inside. So the mistake that a lot of wide receivers will make, and remember I talked about it, you have to run realistic routes when you're in front of scouts. I know a lot of you watching this video are probably high school wide receivers, youth wide receivers, and eventually you're going to go to a college camp, and they're going to be one-on-ones. And when you're doing one-on-ones, you shouldn't be running unrealistic routes. What guys will do, they'll get outside shade and they're running a post, and they're like, oh, great. So they'll attack his leverage, he'll widen it, and then they just run away from the guy and just go round it off and catch this post on the opposite hash. That's not realistic. That won't impress a coach who knows what he's doing. Oh yeah, maybe all the cameras will be out there and they'll get you catching a touchdown, but nobody cares. That's not a realistic route. In a real game, you're running right into a safety. So we have to do something called getting skinny, just like that example we showed from Tank Dell. So you see how he attacks his leverage, he takes the inside release, but he does something called the chicken wing method, as I like to call it. That's where you lean into this DB with your body. You're trying to use your size to your advantage, the speed to your advantage, and it's a way that you can push off without pushing off because your arm's not extended. This would be a flag if there was maybe a yard of space and he extended his arm and pushed. But because he used his size and leaned into this DB, that's what got him that extra step of separation, and it helped him keep spacing on the play. He didn't just run away from the guy and catch the ball in the opposite hash. That's a textbook route, and that is called having a plan. Off the line, I guarantee you his goal, let's attack his leverage with that wide step, and his goal is probably let's try to restack him. But if we can't restack, we have to have a plan. That's what I was talking about in that very first example. We need a plan, fellas. I need a plan of action. If he takes it away, I'm doing this. If he doesn't, I'm doing this. And it needs to be a habit because we cannot think too much out there because the game is so fast and DBs get faster and faster every single year. Let's play this again full speed one more time. Great job here. Attacking his leverage outside, leaning into him at the break point and using his size to create that separation. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, we are going to be traveling out to 12 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So if you guys want some more information on that, how you can sign up, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you there. I'll see you guys next time.